tell you every week, it is indeed a good morning. And welcome to Straight Up the Middle on In Touch News Radio, reality radio. Everybody can be a star. You know, I say that every week, but I truly mean that this is a place where anyone on In Touch News really can be part of what's really happening. We don't have the overarching infrastructure and layers of production and directors and strategists and all those kinds of things that I think sometimes get in the way of getting real information out to people in the community. In Touch News is a grassroots radio station that really seeks to serve the community nationwide. And it is really the future, I think, of communication and messaging that I think allows individuals to tap into what is happening in their community. So I just want to welcome everybody to In Touch News Radio this morning. The professor, Professor Tony C. Brook, he is not with us this morning. He is off educating the youths of America so that they can do what they need to do. And I say that, affectionately, but I think it's important that we embrace our educators. They're in a tough space right now with COVID and some of the things that have happened. But we want to just lift him up this morning. And while he's not here now, when you're not around, you know the deal. At the family reunion, get talked about. You know how it works. If you're not around, you're going to get talked about. And let me just check with my guest that I have holding right now. Mr. Stewart, can you hear me? Mr. Stewart, can you hear me? I can see you, Mr. Stewart, but I can't hear you. You need to get your camera down a little lower so we can see that there, see your face. There you go, a little bit better, Mr. Stewart. Anyway, also we have in studio, like I said, we don't have a big complex operation. We have a simple operation. In our studio, we have Princess Anna, DJ Anna, as she is affectionately known, who makes sure that everything operates technically appropriately from the studio side of things and keeps things on track and timing us. But I just want to encourage everyone to embrace the In Touch News station and its concept because they are absolutely a wonderful organization. So with that laid out, let's get into some discussion this morning. You'll hear me going back and forth with Mr. Stewart, trying to get him taken care of because he's a civil rights icon. And when I say Mr. Stewart, I'm talking about none other than Attorney Delano Stewart, who is still having some technical connection issues right now. And but Mr. Stewart is one of the premier lawyers in the Tampa area, instrumental in desegregating our community and making sure that we were able to do a lot of the things that have let our community, work the way that it should do. So I just want to say that it is important that we embrace these icons and help and let them know that we care about them, we appreciate them, but most of all that they have a role to play in what we're doing currently. It would be a travesty if we did not use that information as we go forward in America and attack some of the issues that's continue to affect us. You cannot, build a future without using your past. Mr. Stewart, are you connected now? Again, I can see you, but I can't hear you. And I'm not sure at this point in time. It doesn't look like you're muted. Bring your volume up, Mr. Stewart, on your phone. Turn the volume up. If you can do that for me. You all have been around with me long enough to know that you all have been around me long enough to know that when the professor's away, sometime I'm accused of this show getting off the middle, getting out of the middle of where it is. And that's understandable because I struggle with really truly appreciating the Republican perspective. And the last 4 years really brought that home. They really, really brought that home to me, that the Republican Party lacks a conviction with its supposed ideals that they espouse. You can see one of those, I thought, was when, if you really look back and say, well, when they embraced the old Confederate ideology and imagery, that was one key fact. Because really, there's no role for anything Confederate in America at this time, but for its historical, looking at it from a historical point of view, so that we don't have those things happen. Mr. Stewart, are you there now? Can you hear me? Again, I can see you, but I can't hear you. So hopefully we can get this worked out with Mr. Stewart on his phone. But the Confederacy, when it was embraced, because in a nutshell, the Confederacy represents a failed effort to destroy America. Think about that. A failed effort to destroy America. And it's kind of like, and I said this before, it's kind of like losing your homecoming game and leaving the score up on the stadium every week so that everybody can be reminded we lost the fight. But the Republicans embraced that ideology and brought that into their fold many, many years ago, decades ago. That's an indicator to me that there's a lack of commitment to ideology, or maybe the ideology is not what we think it to be. But if we fast forward the last 4 years, it's much more emblematic, though, of the downfall of the whole Republican idea. First, their election of Donald Trump. He may go down as the worst representation of democracy ever. You know, I've always said that if you look through American history, rarely has the election process gotten it so wrong. I mean, gotten it just so wrong. But it did. It absolutely completely botched the entire election process, and as a result of that, we're stuck with what we have, at this point in time. The other thing is about the whole, and I want to get this off my chest now. The other thing is the willingness to embrace ideals for such short-term gain. There's no doubt that these people realize that the things that they're talking about, a lot of things that they're pushing, will not benefit America in the long run. But they did it anyway, and they abandoned the ideals that they espoused to. So today, without the professor here, we're going to go through a bunch of things and kind of talk about some stuff. We're going to talk about the Civil War in the Republican Party. We'll talk about that. We're talking about Ted Cruz showing how his commitment to democracy and commitment to the people of Texas by running off to Mexico when it got too cold and he could not. Let me do this real quick here. I see Mr. Stewart there. Let me see if I can unmute him myself. Let's see if I can do that and bring him in. Everybody, just hold on for just a minute, because let's see, we got all right, so there we go. And I'm trying to unmute someone who's trying to come into our on our chat here. And so with that being so I just think that, Mr. Stewart, can you hear me now?
I hear you very well.
Oh, all right, then. Now bring your camera down just a little bit for me, Mr. All right, just a little bit more, so I can see, so we get that beautiful face. All right, there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, listen, we have now got with us live Attorney Delano Stewart, civil rights icon from the city of Tampa, the former everything in the law that you can think of. And I want him to come on this show for a while now, talk about a couple of things. One is Black History Month, and he is the embodiment of Black history and what is possible in this country for Black people and the change that we can make in our own communities and have that spread throughout the state and throughout the country. So good morning, Mr. Stewart. How are you doing today?
I am wonderful, and I have been trying to get into this very modern conversation this morning.
Well, listen, technology. Think about it. I remember the days when we'd have to drag ourselves down to the studio to do shows when you were on the JW Wiles show and I was doing my show on WTMP. We had to drag us. Now we can stay at home and do shows remotely.
It's truly amazing. And what I wanted to start with, listening to what you were saying, I moved to Strat Icon. I am an older gentleman, and I'm appreciative of being able to be the age I am currently 85 and trying very hard to get to 86. But at the beginning of the year and the fiasco that happened during the inaugural week, I had 3 daughters who told me they were going, and I was concerned. And the 3 of them said, "Daddy, the same God that protected you in '63, the March on Washington, and when you went back to the Million Man March, is the same God that's going to protect me." And one of the most heartwarming things that they experienced, they were trying to go to the Martin Luther King statue, but because of all of the discord, and they went to the Arlington Cemetery. And I'm talking to them, and they said, "Daddy, you don't know how good it made me feel to see all of those crosses and flags." And it just, in my mind, told me about the myriads of sacrifices that have been made by people dying for this country who I didn't know, but had they not died for me, I couldn't be here. And that to me was heartwarming, and it tells me that I am nearing the end of my journey. For when your children understand that it is the sacrifice that others have made that make you able to enjoy your day.
Well, let me ask you, Dale. I know that your perspective, and like I say, I think of age as steps on a ladder. And the older you get, the higher up you go, the more you can see about society. If I could ask you, Dale, to bring your camera down a little bit so we get your face, and there we go. We do video live also, Dale, so people can see you. Hopefully, you might get a phone call or two, but we're live also on Facebook and on YouTube. We promote the show that way as well. But I wanted to ask you about, as you look at the world today, after all these years, where is the struggle left? Where we now should be having our focus? At a point in time, it was clear it was on the demonstrative visual discrimination, but where should our focus be now as to where we need to get equity in America for African Americans?
Let me put it unequivocally that it is the same for every newborn child in the world. I have found that there is no universal goodness, universal badness. And I know that you and I and all Black people must understand that after what occurred in DC, with all these people shaking the very democracy that I love, died for, was willing to die for when I served 3 years, 7 months, and 21 days. But there are still enemies within our ranks. And we have to be mindful of the fact that there is no universal goodness that exists forever. And every day you must do everything in your mind to achieve intellectuality where you understand what you're doing, and you got to be careful. And that occurrence reminded me of when World War II started. I was 6 or 7 years of age, but I understood that 2 of my cousins were being drafted and were going to war to fight for things that we benefit from. And it is a continuation. And it always makes me understand that as good as it is, it doesn't take but a second for people to come out of the woodwork, Proud Boys. And these people threaten my very existence as much as Japan bombing in Pearl Harbor. There's not a bit of difference.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so your camera's drifting back down again. There we go. Keep that face in the middle of the screen for me, Dale. So I mean, you know, Dale, and I have a reflection of my brothers were drafted into Vietnam, and I remember that green car pulling up in front of our house, picking my brother up. It's like, I mean, to this day, I remember that green car, and I think of him being an 18-year-old just graduating high school. I couldn't imagine going off into that world there. But when I look at the world now, I just think that the platform now is this, the battle seems to be in an economic front. And it may have always been economics. I think slavery was economics and Jim Crow was economics. But it seems to me the place to fight now is in the economic realm, making sure that people have the financial means to have the kind of life that they deserve in America. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, let me say, you cannot have economic means if you don't have power, because power and economics are Siamese twins.
Oh, and I like that. They Siamese twins.
Where there's money, there's power. Where there's power, there's money. And I'm old enough to know if a man and a woman in a community has money, they also got power. You can't separate power and money.
So you have to have power. So that means that, and when you say so, if you don't have money, you can't have power, and power equals money.
Power makes certain you will have money. And first of all, the greatest example of power and money is Donald Trump is not intellectual. He is not smart. He inherited money, and he used money to his advantage to clip, con, and batter and bully everybody he's ever encountered. And if you go down his record, he has never been fair. Everybody who invested with him in Atlantic City, those casinos, is broke, but him.
Let me ask you, Del, about, since you brought up Donald Trump, why did America elect Donald Trump? What was it in America that said, we want this guy to be our president?
Because he understood that Obama had been president, and that white people who had been taught all of their lives that they were superior and they could not beat this African-raised half-breed, they were frightened. And when you have been lied to all your life about your superiority, and then you got a black man who's in control and who the Speaker of the House says he will never get a bill passed and he will be a one-termer, and they could not stop him from winning twice, and white people got frightened because they believe, and they are guilt-ridden because of all the things they have done with us. So that makes them afraid that somewhere we're going to give them payback. But we are people of faith. They will be paid back by a greater power than they are and that we are.
Go ahead.
God created us all.
Wait a minute. Now you got to say that sermon for Sunday, Reverend Stewart. Listen, everybody. I have with me live on Intex News Radio this morning none other than civil rights icon, attorney Delano Stewart. All things civil rights in the city of Tampa, the state of Florida, nationwide. I mean, he's left a great wake in our community as a fighter at the grassroots level and understanding how you change society. I want to give out some information to everybody while you're listening in. So if you want to participate in the show, here's how you do it. You text on your phone 25324. That's the number. And in the subject, you put in SUTM, stands for straight up the middle. So text 25324, and then put in SUTM. That'll give you a link, and then we can communicate with you directly on our show. We can talk to you. I've got about another 10 minutes with Mr. Stewart this morning. I want to go back to something because you kind of dovetail Donald Trump into this idea of white privilege, I think, and this idea of superiority, and America is somehow under threat because of Obama becoming president or the uplifting of African Americans. Is that a good way to put it? That you're saying people are afraid of us rising up, that we may give them payback for the things that they've done.
Yeah, that is the primary problem that they have. And when you have exploited a man and exploited a person and exploited a people as we have been exploited deep in the recesses of their mind, and as we gain more power and get more strength, and we're dominating all of the athletic circumstances.
Excuse me.
And you think about Athens and Sparta, there's always been this divide between intellectuality and the strength of the body and power. And you and I know, when you look at the Roman gladiators, but Socrates was intellectual. So there's always been that struggle between intellectuality and brute strength. And as I said to someone else, all you got to do is look at the new senator from Georgia, who was number 11 of 12. But I am certain that he can get a biscuit. He ain't big as he is now, because he couldn't get them biscuits when they passed by at breakfast in the morning.
Listen, listen, I come from a family of 9 kids. I know what it's like when you that line up for breakfast in there, and them big brothers in front.
That's right.
Hey, and even when you got your plate full, you have to guard your plate, because they come over there and get a little bit off that too, Dale. I mean, well, but you know, but we're trying to enlighten America and take America to a new place. How do we get everybody on board, or get more people on board? Because I don't think that Black people, we're going to be able to do this on your own. I think there has to be a combined effort with other allies and other communities and other groups to change how things are in America.
Well, let's talk about the reality of change. This is Black History Week, and it always makes me sad, because we are involved in Black history every day. And the slave master understood it better than we ever will. You had a slave that was talented, you loaned him and rented him out to other slave masters so that they could make a profit off his skills. There's nothing different now. And it's the same way as what's happening in the NBA. You own a contract, you don't own the man. But once a person gets power over you, you had jobs whereby the man wanted more from you than what he was paying you for. And you have to stop people, because everybody exploits you. It is the nature of the weakness of mankind, unfortunately.
Wow, that is profound. That people are tend to, and so you have to have something else, I think, that balances out this willingness or desire to do so. But talk to me a little bit about how do we impact our current political system, the power piece? How, because I think that may be the one place where money doesn't control your how you play in it, because people can vote. You don't have, it doesn't cost you anything to vote. What is your assessment of the current political environment that we're in, Del?
It is currently a free for all, with the majority who are not the majority anymore, because between Latins, Asians, and Blacks, that truthfully, white folks are now in a minority position, and they are feeling what we felt. They feel powerless because of what is occurring. They can't win the battles. Look, you pick up your TV, you look at the NBA, baseball is the only place where white people are thriving now. And they are thriving only because brothers rather play basketball and football than to play baseball. That's reality.
Uh-huh.
And even in the major leagues, the majority of great ball players are from Central and South America and Cuba. So they are right now sort of in a state of fluctuation. They have to learn how to survive the new world, because it is a world.
Right. So let me ask you, I know that you're no longer practicing law, and every time I come by and talk with you, I hear about this book. When can we expect for you? When can we expect that book to be finished?
Well, I talked with the guy who's helping me, and when I've been working on it this morning, and I think that April I will have it published. If nobody buys it, I will self-publish. I'm not really worried about that.
So let me say this, Dale. Now, I've sat with you on that patio. I sat with you in your living room, and I know what kind of chapters you got for this book. And I want to hit a chapter about, how Daddy D does Tampa, and that's Cadillac. We got some chapters in that book.
Well, you know what's interesting about life? I never ever, and I swore that I would never own a Cadillac, and never wanted to ever be known by that which was superficial. And I ended up having a friend who worked for the Cadillac company here, and I ended up getting a convertible white Cadillac with houndstooth shit, and I put Daddy D on my tag, and they love when I roll through the project. Daddy D, and it's always intriguing about how things you don't want.
Hold on for a minute. So I'm gonna bring in real quick. I've got Edna Rain in the waiting room. I'm gonna bring him in real quick. Can you stick around, Dale, after the break?
Yeah, you tell Ed.
I want you to stick around and to do the second part of the show with me and Edna Rain. Ladies and gentlemen, I have former state representative, the Honorable Edna Rain, who just came on with us. Mr. Narain, if you could just sit tight. I got to go to break, but Mr. Stewart's going to stick around. And
he's going to stay?
He's used to being the questioner. We're going to ask you some questions, Dale. You're going to be on the stand. We're going to come. We're going to take a quick break if everybody can stick with us. You're listening to In Touch News Radio, reality radio where everybody's a star. We're going to take a quick break, go to the commercials, and we'll be right back with the second part of the show with Attorney Delano Stewart and the Honorable Edna Rain. We'll be right back, everybody.
Good morning.
It may be hard to believe, but people just like you are already saving money. FeedThePig.org makes it easy. Their simple savings plan teaches you how to start saving without going overboard, so you don't need to start foraging wild berries.
I was skeptical, but these are actually pretty good.
You don't need to sell your soul to the devil.
$15 is the best I can do.
You just need FeedThePig.org. Don't get left behind. Get tips and tools at FeedThePig.org. Brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Welcome to Calvin's Barbershop.
You all got to see this.
I don't even want to know what you're looking at on that phone.
Well, you should. I was learning about the dangers of high blood pressure and that we need to get ours checked regularly. High blood pressure can increase the risk of heart attack or stroke, but this text program can help keep it at a healthy range. Just text Barbershop to 97779 to sign up.
I'll get right on it as soon as I'm done with this baby panda video.
Text Barbershop to 97779. A message from the American Heart Association and the Ad Council.
When it comes to reality radio, everyone is a star.
Shining star for you to see what your life can truly be.
On your smooth soul and R&B station.
On the World Wide Web.
In Touch Radio.
All right, we're back live with Intex News Radio, reality radio where everybody can be a star. My name is Attorney Clinton Paris. I am one of the hosts of Straight Up the Middle. My other co-host, Professor Tony Seabrook, could not be here with us today. And the whole goal of Straight Up the Middle is really to keep varying perspectives in the public discourse about political issues and issues affecting communities. And hopefully people can be enlightened by that. I also invite everyone, if you're able to tune into the Intex News website at intexnews.com. They have a full suite of information and talk shows throughout the week and music and just a great place for information. So I just encourage you all to do so. Also, following my show, there's a great show called The Sole Purpose, one of my favorite couples, Monica and Keith. I may say it back the other way. Keith and Monica Harris, where they cook up great recipes and at the same time provide great insight for couples and relationships and touch on things related to emotionality and mental issues, things that we don't talk about in our community. So I encourage everyone, if you're listening to my show, stick around at 11 o'clock for that show. Now, this morning, I'm just beside myself because I'm boxed in here. I've got Attorney Delano Stewart, one of Tampa's icon civil rights leaders, on one side of me, and I've got the other side. I've got the Honorable Ed Narain. Good morning, Mr. Narain. How you doing today?
Hey, I am doing well. Thanks for having me on the show, as always. I wanted to just, when you told me you were having Del on the show, I said, I want to get on there for a couple of reasons, right? First of all, it's indeed my pleasure to be here with you and Del, two attorneys that I literally and figuratively stand on the shoulders of. You, Clint, as being one of the people that encouraged me to go to law school and helped me get in. And you, Mr. Stewart, someone who I've long admired and respected and has always been in my ear, like you are all the attorneys in Florida, about doing the right thing. Clint, you may remember, it was probably about 15, 16 years ago, you and I went on the Hype the Kappa golf tournament back when Del and the late JDB Wiles had their show. And yes. I was a poll marker of the chapter, and Del made some comment about being a poll cat. So it's good for once to have two Kappas in one queue instead of two queues and a Kappa on a call, man. I'm just glad for that.
That is outstanding. But no, I appreciate you coming on this morning, Ed, and helping me out with the professor not being. I've got Del here. And I was asking Del about the current discourse of politics. What is your take, Ed, on this civil war in the Republican Party? Because it is open and it's flat out a civil war.
So look, this is not new. I think every 60 years or so, you see the political parties kind of recalibrate either around an ideology or an individual. And in this case, we're seeing that around Donald Trump. We all know the man was guilty of sin in causing the insurrection. 7 of the Republican senators agreed, but the other 43 stayed with him for political calculations. They know that he is putting together his, Save America PAC and his Patriot group, and they're going to have a battle. I think Trump has pledged to basically put a candidate in every single Republican primary in 2022. So we'll see what happens. No different than the Democrats went through in the 60s after the civil rights legislation passed. You saw a lot of people in the South who didn't agree, and you had candidates running, and the party shifted. The same thing is happening here with the Republican Party. The question is Trump going to be the leader of the Republican Party, or is Mitch McConnell going to end up on top? And right now, I hate to say it, but I'd bet on Donald Trump the way the primaries are set up.
And I'd like to get your take on that, Dale. I mean, it looks like they've got an all-out civil war. You heard Ed mention this was something that happened back when the Democratic Party decided to take the high road of moral values and work to lift the veil of discrimination or oppression with the Civil Rights Act. What is your take on the Civil War going on and with the fight with the Republicans right now? What's going on now?
Well, I think that there is a greater fight than that. And what we must understand about power, and one of the most amazing things, I practiced law with Athenia Joyner, who Edna Rain was the Toastmaster for her 50th year celebration. Mm-hmm. When I nominated Athenia to be the president of the National Bar Association, I was shocked at the reactions of my brethren, and I wrote a letter. How can you, who have been in the forefront of civil rights, not understand that to segregate against her because of her femininity is the same as white people holding you back? So what we are seeing with the Republican Party is about power, pure and simple. And when people are seeking power, whether it's male, female, Japanese, Spanish speaking, it is the same fight. Somebody wanting to control other people. And this is what we have to be prepared for. I think we have to be prepared as Black people for all our war. For what they did at the Capitol, it was so obviously racist. I'm prepared to die for my country again. I can't fit the uniform I used to have, but I still can shoot and I still can fight. And that's what we're going to have to do. We cannot be naive about what these people will not do for power. Those people, all of the Black people who cleaned up the Capitol were saying that they had not been called N-I-G-G-E-R as much with those people who were in there as they'd ever been called in their life. So we better be prepared to die, because it is not problematic of what these people will do to keep you from having a little power. And that's all we've ever had is a little.
Look, well, I mean, and I would like to think that as time continues to go on, and I appreciate you moving your camera back down, Dale, that we will continue to get more and more power. I think we're doing we'll move first. I think there's a great transition in the South that's happening that people may not appreciate politically. You have an influx of people moving to the South that I think are going to change the dynamics of politics. I think that played itself out in Georgia. We had it ready to go in Florida, Ed. We had it. We were right there on the cusp of it. I think we've had a little bit of a setback, but I think we're going to be coming back with that, because these people, I think Republicans, they're pure hypocrites. And I want to move our conversation to what happened with Ted Cruz. Here was Ted Cruz. Here's Ted Cruz. All constitutional. He's all things Texas, so on and so forth. He's pissing the ring. It gets a little cold, and his wife said, "Look, man, you better get us out of. You better get us up out of here." And Dale, you know how when the wife speaks. Well, next thing you know, he's in Cancun with 80 degrees.
No, Clint, come on, man.
What'd you think, Ed? What'd you think?
Come on, Clint. That man was doing nothing but being a good husband and a good father and making sure that his children are going to be safe and have clean water.
Wait a minute, Ed. You've been married long enough. Damn, whoa. The man's wife said, "Look, it's cold as hell in
here's
here."
What all of us knew from the time he was debating Donald Trump. When Donald Trump insulted his daddy and his wife, and the next thing you know, his tongue is straight up Trump's butt, you knew who he was. He is a castrato. Yep. You all remember in the 14th century, those gentlemen who had nice voices, they had that testicle clip where their voices wasn't changed. And he is one of them. He is a castrato. He is not manly, and he stands for not a damn thing. Wherever wind blows is where he will be.
And what's the political fallout for him, though, from that having occurred, Ed? What do you think?
That's a hard one to calculate, right? Because that is up to Texans at this point.
Right.
I know if I'm a Texan and I'm sitting in the cold and I have no water, running water, I have no heat in my house. My girl's over here looking at me like, Daddy, do something. And meanwhile, our U.S. Senator is in nice, warm Cancun. I'm coming out to vote, and everybody I know is coming out to vote to get him out of office. But politics is a strange thing, right? It is driven a lot by emotion. The question is whether or not the Democratic Party in Texas is organized and even has a candidate they can field up against him, and whether or not his buttering up to Trump is going to result in actual dollars for his campaign. But right now, it's not a good look. It's extremely embarrassing. But we've seen stranger things happen with candidates. I mean, we've had people accused of all kinds of things that still get elected and reelected. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's reelected to the Senate despite the openly hypocritical stance he took this week.
Didn't he have a tough fight last time for to get back in there? And in fact, I think Trump went down there for a couple of campaign events, didn't he? So it's not like he's in a strong position in Texas. So I think this makes him even weaker and maybe a target. Maybe Beto O'Rourke comes back and runs again, or
O'Rourke is coming back. The Democratic Party and those of us who are sane ought to be encouraging him and raising money for him right now. We ought to try to bury him as fast as we can and as deep as we can.
With the current makeup of the Senate, he's going to have when you're not in power, it's tough to get some kind of signature legislation or something that shows what you can and cannot do. And I'm hoping that the Democrats are strong enough to put pressure and strangle these Republicans while, they're down, they're damaged, they're hurt. And so one of the things that everybody was worried about was, is Joe Biden going to be up to the job? Is he up to the job of being president? What's your take so far on the job that Joe Biden is doing, Mr. Stewart?
I love Joe Biden. Joe Biden, because he is not Harvard or Yale trained, is a gooder politician as has been around in the last 50 years. You must remember, he and Obama, in a sense, and we don't want to say it too loudly, this is Obama's third term. But if we say that, then you know who's fighting. But it really is because he was extremely loyal to Barack, and Barack wouldn't have had the achievements he had but for Joe Biden. That is the reality of a man who spent 40 years in the Senate. He is as good almost as Lyndon Johnson. He just has not had the chance to show it, but I think he will, because Lyndon Johnson was a supreme politician and he shocked the nation. Everybody considered the Kennedys, the young boys, as more liberal, but Lyndon in a single shot did more for the nation and the advancement of civil rights than all of the politicians in the 50 years prior to the time he got there. And I think Joe Biden.
Now, what role does his age, race, and being a man, the fact that he's an old white man putting this forward, kind of like Lyndon Johnson, would you agree?
Well, yeah, but think about this. He has beside him not only a woman who's Black, Indian, fine, and smart. All those things are changing. And women got a lot more power than we give them credit for having. It's like those women who were helping Trump under whatever guise they were doing it. Women got a lot of money, and because of the speaker and the vice president, women and Biden have a lot more power than we give them credit for having.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, Ed, what are your thoughts on the job that Biden is doing so far?
You know what I love about the Biden administration so far? I don't wake up to crazy tweets, to the media being outraged over the latest scandal. The biggest scandal of the Biden administration so far is the deputy press secretary who resigned. because he threatened a reporter after the reporter challenged his relationship with another member of the administration, which was disclosed, by the way. And, you know, President Biden and his team, I think, probably asked him to resign, but he said he resigned on his own. But nonetheless, that's the biggest scandal, right? He told a reporter, "I will destroy you." That's a return to normalcy and decency that we haven't seen in the last 4 years. So I welcome that. But, you know, your question about Joe Biden's age and competency, these are things I never had concerns about. If you go back 2 years ago when this whole primary thing started, I told anybody who would listen, Joe Biden's my guy. I thought that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would made a great ticket. I'm on the record with that. You can go pull it up. And so far, so good. I mean, he gave a policy speech this week in Munich where he talked about America being back. I mean, rejoining the Paris Accords, for example, on climate change. This is a man who knows policy, okay? Don't mistake politics and policy. This is something I always warn candidates about. When you are running, it's political. If you win, it becomes policy. Now you focus on the policy. What we see happen too often is people get elected and they continue with the politics instead of trying to work across the aisle and get things done for their constituents. Joe Biden, being a long-term senator, understands the US government at the federal level better than any president we have had in the last 40 years. Maybe his rival would probably be George Herbert Walker Bush, but not anybody. Barack Obama was a senator for 2 years before he ran for the presidency. George W. Bush was a governor of Texas for less than a term before he became president. Bill Clinton only knew Arkansas state politics. So when we go back in history, Joe Biden is the most accomplished member of the federal government to rise to the presidency in our lifetimes.
You're absolutely, because Reagan likewise was a governor, Carter was likewise a governor. You know, so you're right about that. It goes back a very, very long time before you have. So what do you take about what Mr. Stewart said about women of power? That you know, that this really is a key thing that may be understated. And I guess I'm leaning to what we can anticipate from Kamala and her profile. And I guess, is her profile, does she need to raise her profile, or, you know, kind of talk about that a little bit for me?
Well, I'll say this on Kamala before I pivot. You know, she's doing what she's supposed to do. She's the vice president. She's the, in case of emergency, break glass. But keep in mind that just because it seems like her profile is low doesn't mean she's working. She's fielded calls from international leaders, 2 of which happened in the last week. She's doing what she can to get the domestic policy of the United States in order. I know for a fact that former Congressman Cedric Richmond, did a conversation with the National Bar Association just this past week. So she is handling her responsibilities and duties. And of course, we saw that she was a tie-breaking vote earlier when she started as vice president within the Senate on a number of issues related to how the Senate was going to function, and of course, with the impeachment trial that just occurred. So she's doing the job. As far as women having power, I think all of us as married men understand that women have power. Many years ago, I was given a talk on behalf of the fraternity at a church, and I said something that I'd heard a long time ago from one of the brothers, and I said, listen, men, we are the head of our households. But if we're the head, that means that women are the neck. And if you've ever had a pain in the neck, you know that your head is not going to turn if your neck is in pain. So women have always had the power. Politically, we saw in the wake of Trump's election back in early 17, the marches that happened, those were women marches, and they took over and they didn't like what happened. And of course, it was Black women in particular who made sure that Joe Biden got elected to the presidency, somewhat in support of Kamala Harris, but also in a rebuke of what they'd seen the last 4 years.
Listen, this show is an hour show, and it feels like it's a 10-minute show. We've got about 5 minutes left. And Ed, I'm gonna ask Del about the Kamala Harris profile, and I want to turn it back over to you and let you ask Mr. Stewart any question that you might like to ask. But Del, what are your thoughts about Kamala Harris's profile so far in the administration? What kind of a job is she doing?
She's doing a very, very, very good job, and she is sensible enough not to get ahead of herself, because she is the vice president, and she has to be subtle in her moves. But I think that she has a couple of things that enhances her more than her being black. She's black and Indian. And she has, and pulling into the political process, a group of people who have the Indians in America are very, very prominent. And if you don't think so, you look at the number of Indian doctors throughout this nation. If you get sick and you can't enunciate the Indian doctor, you might be in a graveyard the next week.
You're right about that. I think there's a great opportunity for her to really take advantage of her multiculturalism, her biracial nature, all those kinds of things. I really do think there's I'm going to be interested to see how that plays itself out. I think she needs to be really savvy about what she takes on, because the reality of it is, I hate to say it, but the reality of it is, we want to get her set up to run herself. We want her well established, answered all the questions about her ability and things that may be floating around when it's time for her to like. So I don't hold the microphone all night, all day. We got a couple minutes left. I wanted to make sure I gave Ed a chance to any questions you might want to ask Mr. Stewart. He's agreed that he will give us an open and honest answer. You may desire to witness, Ed.
Well, thank you, Your Honor. If it may please the court, I would ask a question about this Cadillac with the Daddy D tag on it, because of all the stories I've heard from Mr. Stewart, I never heard about that one. I don't know if it was him trying to protect the innocent or what, but I won't go there. Here's what I'll throw at you, Del. You've been around for a long time, and you've been hearing that a lot from us lately. That's one of Clint's favorite sayings. But of all the things that you've seen for Black folks, not just in Tampa, but around the state, it might seem a little bit hopeless, right? We've never seen a Black governor. We've never seen a Black mayor in most of our major cities in this state. We don't see Black elected officials rising up to at-large seats still. What message would you have as someone who's run campaigns, as a former candidate yourself at one point in time in your life? Do you feel like the future is bleak, or do you feel hopeful about the future for the next generation?
I am very hopeful. And the reason, think about this, if you look at the mayors of most of the major cities in America, they are Black. And what we must do, and sometimes you have to be careful, because you never want to ever give the enemy a peep into the inner circle of what we are doing. But it is obvious those people who have charge of the cities will eventually become governors. And it behooves us to be able, when Clint says that we were very close, and we're going to be closer because our governor had the audacity to want to lower the flag, the half-mast, for the a-hole who died on Fox. And we ought to be livid about that, because we cannot allow our governor to promote a racist, and we don't take cognizance of it and beat him everywhere we can beat him. Politics is a very, very nasty game. And when you think about it, I always go, and people ask how we are doing. Well, we're doing very well. Notwithstanding, we shot Red in the pulpit, and we killed on the. So my wife's zooming in another room, and I'm talking too loud.
Part of that power there.
And you know who's in charge.
That power's coming out.
Yeah, well, I am getting a hook from the studio. Let me know that it's time for us to wrap up. I want to thank Mr. Stewart, first of all, for overcoming the technological challenges and getting on the Zoom. Listen, Dale, I know I can get you now, so we're going to have you back on a regular basis to give us your insight on what's happening in our society. Ed, as always, I appreciate you stepping in and helping out. I think the professor is going to be on class schedule for the next couple of weeks. So Ed, I may reach back out again, get you back in again. My door is always open if you always have something that you want to say. So I want to thank Attorney Delano Stewart and the Honorable Ed Narain for joining us today on In Touch News Radio on Straight Up the Middle. Come back next week, join us, hang in there at 11 o'clock. We have a show coming up called The Sole Purpose with attorneys Monica Harris and her husband. Keith is going, I'm sorry, Keith, let me get it right. Keith and Monica Harris. I always say it backwards.
Let me say this before you leave.
Yes, sir.
Monica Harris' father was one of my best friends, and Keith Harris's mother, and I took her to the prom when we were in 8th grade. So y'all can't miss me in this town.
I would hate to say, damn,
you have to log out for sure now.
You have not touched. Well, thank y'all so much. I appreciate y'all being here. We'll be back next week, everybody. Have a great week. Thanks, Ed. Thanks, Dale. Y'all take care.
Take care, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.